coronavirus. So we'll be joined by Caroline Williams, our politics reporter, and she'll talk more actually about those vaccination centres. Some good news for you this morning about that jab rollout, which is of course increasing exponentially across the UK. But first, let's turn back to post-Brexit Britain, shall we? We were hearing earlier on from somebody who said it's just the beginning of the nightmare, a boss of a Dover-based freight company saying that delays could come to our ports. I don't know if you heard my chat with John Shipley, but he thinks we're going to be eating grass as food spoils thanks to delays. And last week we didn't see, though, did we, the gridlock that some had feared on our roads. But here's the thing. A lot of people said to me, no, Anna, but we won't see it in the first week anyway, because a lot of hauliers take their holidays at that time. And of course, they will stockpile before Christmas. This week, though, traffic is expected to increase, levels returning to normal. Now, the ferry company DFDS warned that many lorries were turning up to travel without the proper paperwork. Here's Chris Parker from the firm.
They need to have an export declaration to leave the UK, but they also need to have an import declaration for France, as well as any documentation. If they have food, for example, that needs a separate health assessment which has to be filled in. And of course, the driver needs to have a negative COVID test. So these are all new things, really, for our customers to have to get to grips with.
Yeah, lots to get used to. And as he mentioned, because of the pandemic, the COVID testing is just another thing to do as well. Well, let's talk now to Shane Brennan from the Cold Chain Federation, a trade body for the UK's temperature-controlled supply chain. Shane, thank you so much for being with us again on the Wake Up Call this morning. As we mentioned before, your industry very much under the spotlight because of Brexit. This is week 2, isn't it, of post-Brexit Britain. Do you share the fears of my prior guest, who was quite worried actually about tailbacks?
Yeah, I'm deeply uneasy about how things are going to build through the course of this week. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are learning for the first time how to do post-Brexit trade with a third country, and they've worked really, really hard over the course of the last week. They're not getting everything right, and the message that's coming through from the authorities on the French side in particular is that the non-compliance, the things that aren't 100% right, start getting turned away. So taking a hard medicine approach to compliance. And if that plays out at the same time as trade starts to ramp up, we could see quite a lot of delay and disruption in line with what we predicted might happen in the months building up to this.
Yeah, I mean, could it be the case, Shane, that a lot of people are ready, that there has been enough time? You might say no, but there has been enough time to do the homework, to know what paperwork you need.
I mean, well, there hasn't been enough time. The government, the deal was done on Christmas Eve, so it's only 16 days ago.
Yeah.
And there are loads and loads of detail in there. And yes, the fundamentals of what were required were known for a long time. But this is about 12 different things. There's about 7 different companies working together to try and get this stuff thinking. So the idea that it would be right first time was just a long way away from realistic. And so, the plea really is to everyone on all sides to work together, to collaborate, to realise that we've all got the same goal, to be compliant, but the best way to achieve that through pragmatic collaboration and not through falling out and sort of taking hard lines.
Do you think, therefore, that actually for the first, week or 2 months perhaps, there should be a case of, all right, you got it wrong this time, but off you go, get it right next time?
That's what we would argue that would be better. That would lead to better compliance in the end. Of course, it's not our call. We're in the hands of the French authorities here. We're out of control of this, and we need them to have to work with us. And so our plea is to them is to find ways to help us to make this work.
I thought Brexit was about taking back control.
It doesn't feel like it this week.
Right, okay. But then I suppose you could argue it's going to be in the French interest as well, isn't it, to keep things flowing? They're not going to want tailbacks any more than we are.
I hope not. I mean, certainly not in the medium term. And I think there are ways through this. There are ways to sort of understand how things work. We've got to do better on our side to make sure we fully understand exactly what the French authorities need and what the priorities are for them in terms of making sure that things are compliant. And if we do that, then hopefully then they will reciprocate by sort of working with the businesses and the hauliers to get stuff moving.
Can you clarify something for me, actually, Shane? Because I was given to understand that actually there was a reprieve of 6 months for certain restrictions that our government had said. Is that for incoming lorries?
Absolutely, that's for incoming lorries. The UK government took the decision very, very early on in the process that they would allow things that pretty much relatively uncontrolled into the country for the first 6 months. The EU just took the completely opposite view, that they were going to be 100% enforced from day one.
I see. And if there are problems, if there are queues, I mean, we saw, sadly, didn't we, just before Christmas, a little bit of a dry run because it was a different situation. Obviously, France closed the border. But do you think we're ready in terms of the lorry parks and the contingencies here in the UK?
We had a dry run before Christmas, and I think, whilst that was really bad for the first 2 weeks, actually, we learned a lot from that, and I think that we are in a relatively good place to park lorries up. But parking lorries up is a pretty bad scenario for all involved, whether it's the drivers themselves or the communities and the traffic flows in Kent. So it's a really bad scenario, and we are in management mode if that kicks in. So we really don't want to see it, even if it's more likely.
And Shane, just looking a little bit further into the future then, I mean, do you think that we'll see, problems like the date that was mentioned to me actually early by Mr. Shipley was mid-February. Do you think beyond that things will settle down and our supply chain will be as normal?
Well, I think people in Kent realise this is a fragile border anyway, because it can jam up very very easily, whether it's traffic whether it's weather or other problems, IT systems and the like. We are going to be less fragile for a long time because it's going to be more complicated. So, we're going to work really, really hard to keep this stuff flowing, whether it's the businesses, whether it's the ports, whether it's the authorities, and the French side as well. Like, I don't want stuff to move, but it is going to be more unpredictable for longer. And so, yes, the first phase might take until February, March, but I think it's going to be unsettled for the rest of the year.
Okay, interesting stuff. Well, listen, Shane, perhaps you could keep in touch with us here at the Wake Up Call as time goes on. It'd be good to talk to you again about the progression and about the regulation and the rules, and hopefully we won't see too many problems, but we'd like to talk to you about them should that happen. That's Shane Brennan then from the Cold Chain